got the engine mount off the front of the engine there, because we can't put the cam belt on with the engine mount in place, so that all has to be removed. The camshaft is still in the top dead center position, so the valves are correct for top dead center, which is where the engine pistons are right now. So having tightened down the rocker shaft, there should be no contact with the pistons and the valves right now. Everything is timed more or less where it should be. But before we put the cam belt on, or the timing belt on, we need to change the water pump. And the water pump is this pulley down here, and it spins around inside an aluminium housing, part of the engine block, I believe. And there's two schools of thought, where some types of pump have a metal impeller and some types of pump have a plastic impeller. And the fors and againsts are, if the metal impeller, if the bearing breaks up, then the metal impeller then starts to chew away the aluminium of the water pump housing, so therefore rendering it scrap. The alternative is the plastic type, but the plastic type, over time, what happens is heating and cooling, the plastic becomes brittle and the plastic impeller breaks up, and all the bits go into the engine cooling galleries, and you block up all your waterways, so the engine overheats. So yeah, you take your money, you pay your money, take your choice. Be that as it may, whatever you do, it's always good practice to change the water pump on a regular basis. Somewhere around the 70,000 miles mark, I would imagine, same time as a timing belt, or any opportunity you get when you have all this apart, you may just as well change the water pump, unless you know it's recently been done. So it's good practice to do it. I'm going to get the old one out and then we'll show you fitting the new one. So there's the water pump out of its housing. That's pretty clean and tidy in there. I'm quite happy with that. It's held in with a 6mm bolt at the bottom and a 8mm threaded stud at the top with an elongated hexagon on it, which is 12mm, which I think also acts as a mounting for the cover or something similar. So it's fairly easy to get out. It just basically pops out with a screwdriver. And the old one is this one here, and it's got a metal impeller. It's reasonably good condition. It's a bit rusty on the outside, or a bit corroded on the outside, but that's just aluminium corrosion. And it's sealed with an O-ring. Okay, and that's the one that came out. The one that's going back in is a Ridex number, which is 1260 W for whiskey 0108, and it's exactly the same as the one that came out. It's got a metal impeller on it. It looks identical, in fact. And it's just a case of basically slipping the O-ring over the shoulder. I put a bit of Vaseline on it just so it will seat properly, and then we pop it back in and do it up, and it's as simple as that. There. And literally we put it into the housing, find the screw hole, like so. That's the bottom one in, and then the top one, that's the top one, 8mm. Excuse my fingers, there we go. Somewhere there, it should pick up shortly. There we go. And that is as easy as that. Right, so we've now fitted the belt along with the new tensioner, and if you look down there you can see that the crank pulley is on top dead center. That is the 12 o'clock mark, and if you remember I put a 4 o'clock mark as well, so when those both line up you know that it's on top dead center and you can't get them wrong. I've also got the bolt in the camshaft wheel in the hole into the cylinder head, and I've fitted the tensioner. Now the tensioner is an automatic tensioner, so the way it fits is there's a couple of prongs which fit over a webbing on the front of the engine block. So the tensioner fits onto this stud here, and then a couple of prongs fit onto either side of a web which is cast into the front of the engine block just there. and that basically holds this plate. And then this part here, this is like an automatic tensioning arrow, and the idea is that this, once it's tensioned, this more or less points straight out somewhere around that cutout there, and it puts a spring tension on the idler, on the tension wheel, so that the slack can be taken up as the belt stretches and wears. Slack can be taken up with the spring in the tensioner wheel. So that's the idea of how it works. It's a bit fiddly to fit, but basically you need to end up with it, this plate here, more or less at 9 o'clock, something like that, and you can turn the plate with a hexagon hole in it. If I show you the old one, you can see that there's a hexagon hole there, and you can use an Allen key to turn that so that it gets the right tension. And once you've set the tension on the belt, then turn the engine 4 times in normal rotation, so clockwise. That will seat the belt correctly on the pulley and on the on all 3 pulleys, and also on the idler, on the tensioner. And you double check then that your pins go back into the holes where they should be. So that one there, and then the one down on the bottom, which goes all the way to the flywheel at the back. Make sure they go back into their holes, and you've got top dead center on your marks on the pulley, and it is all ready to go. Once it's all done up again and you've all tightened all this up, you need to make sure that plate there on the tensioner is more or less pointing somewhere around about 9 o'clock, something like that. That pointer down there needs to be somewhere pointing somewhere around about that cutout in there. And yeah, that's pretty much it done. It's quite fiddly. There's no point in me videoing me doing it because you wouldn't have seen anything. So that's it on.
Have you spotted the problem yet? I bet you can spot it now. This is what happens when you're merrily prizing away at effectively a plastic housing without having removed the last bolt, and all of a sudden you're left with 2 bits. I did actually think, in my defence, that this was 2 separate housings, because this is your thermostat housing for your cooling thermostat. So this is a water jacket and full of water, and this side is actually, this part here goes over the end of the camshaft, so this part has got oil in it. Okay, so it's a return back to the cylinder block for the camshaft housing and all the oil that's splashing around in there. It's made of plastic, like a lot of these things are these days, and if you forget to take a bolt out and you start prizing it away, it breaks into 2 bits. So, need a new one. And voila! New one duly ordered. Not hugely expensive, about 23 or 4 pounds, something like that. It comes with a temperature sensor, which is useful. Thermostat in this end, inlet pipe here, or an outlet pipe there perhaps. I think possibly to heater actually, because it's a smaller pipe goes on there. So thermostat, main cooling circuit in and out of here into the engine block in the cylinder head. This off to the heater unit, I think, in the cabin. This side is your oil way for your camshaft area. It comes supplied with a gasket, like that. And I urge you to use the gasket. You can use some sealant on it if you want to, but you don't need to, because if you have a gasket, it's already done for you. The original one had all this stuff in it. No gasket at all this rubber, silicone rubber sealer, and this stuff, in my view, is the spawn of the devil. This gets into your oil ways, your waterways, all the passages, and it blocks up all the little holes inside the cylinder block and the pressure holes for your oil, your water galleries, and it causes issues with cooling and lack of lubrication. The original had this. I'm not putting this sort of stuff back in. I have a gasket. I'm going to probably put a bit of grease around the gasket just to hold it in place, possibly some Hylamar, have some of that. but certainly not silicon rubber. That was original. I'm quite surprised about that, but it is what it is. So we don't want that. Get that away. Don't need it. Horrible stuff. Absolutely horrible. So the next thing is to fit it to the car. So let's have a go. So we're going into brass, so it's not too difficult to cut. We do have to be a bit careful with brass, it doesn't jam. We've got to the bottom of the hole now, and that has cut the thread. And it's an M6 thread, fairly standard, metric. I'll just take that out. Get rid of all the swarf, and now we have a thread into which we should be able to screw the bolt. There we go. I'll stick it all back together again. Again, you don't want to be going too tight because you're screwing a steel screw into a brass insert on a plastic housing. So just go steady when you're tightening up any of these fittings and such like, because they easily break, as I've already found out trying to get the old one off, and in previous jobs. All this modern stuff is not built for heavy-handed fingers, and I have to confess that I have heavy-handed fingers. So modern equipment doesn't really go with me, I'm afraid. But anyway, it is what it is. In some ways it's easy for reassembly, that's the reason it's like it is. Or easy for assembly, I should say, not reassembly. It's not easy to reassemble because you're not in a nice clean production line. But yeah, when they make these things, all this stuff is easy to fit, it's easy to make, and then everyone else can go hang after that in terms of maintenance. Stuff breaks, stuff goes brittle, you know, at least with steel and cast iron and such like, you know that it's going to last, whereas this plastic stuff is just rubbish basically. Anyway, I got off my soapbox. On to the next thing. Just going to build up all the brackets and such like all the way around here, get all the bits and pieces back on there, make sure everything's tight, plug in the thermostat, the thermostat and temperature sensor, and there's a couple of other plugs I've got to find homes for. I've got one here which I can't remember where it came from, that one, I don't know where that came from at the moment, but I'll have a look for it in a second and see where that goes. It might be the airbox, I'm not sure. So that's nearly done at this end of the car, or this end of the engine I should say, and then at the other end we've got to fit the alternator belt and front pulley, and then we try it. What I've also noticed is that these holes here are actually not as deep as the holes on the original unit, so the bolts I've got are too long. So I'm going to just pack them with washers, because all it's holding is this metal plate, that's all it does. So not too worried about that. But yeah, another problem with buying aftermarket cheaper parts, I suppose. So I'm onto the exhaust manifold now, and I elected just to undo the 8 bolts that bolt to the cylinder head. When I took the cylinder head off, I didn't undo the joint between the exhaust manifold and the cat, which is down there, and that was for ease of time in the first instance, not really knowing where we were going to go with this at the time, so I just went for the easy option, and my god, getting it back on, what a pain in the rear. Not only that, there's a very sharp metal gasket down there, and yeah, I'm bleeding. The one with the black tape is very deep. Just down there, there's a metal gasket between the exhaust manifold and the catalytic converter. God, it's sharp, and I've caught both knuckles, one and then the other, so not both at the same time either. So be aware of that. Certainly sweated and blood over this one, that's for sure. Oh god. Anyway, I've now got all 8 bolts lined up with a new gasket, and just wiping the blood off of everything. So I'm just doing the exhaust manifold bolts now, just bolting them down. Sort of a sequence, sort of opposites really. Just so that it seats nice and squarely, and everything goes down as it should. I do have to put the exhaust shroud over at some point as well, and I seem to remember I had to loosen all the engine mount off to get that off, so I might have to undo the engine mount after all. I'll put it all back together at the moment, but we'll see how we go. Right, that's done up now. That took a bit of doing, so leave yourself plenty of time for that one. Don't be doing that at 7 o'clock in the evening. That was a real pain to get these bolts lined up with the gasket and everything else, and get them to screw into the head. And remember, it's an aluminium head. If you get them cross-threaded, or if they're at all tight, you're going to strip the threads in the head, and then you're going to be in deep doo-doo. Be a helicoil job in the thread if you do that. So take your time over it, and it should be okay. Right, so exhaust manifold is on now. Airbox is not in yet. This plate is on. This plate is put back in. I found the spare plug that was without a home. That goes onto the throttle body at the back of the... we're nearly done. Not long to go before we start up. And I've got to put the front pulley on the crankshaft for the alternator belt, and put the belt on to the alternator on the right side there. But first we've got to put the black plastic cover back over the bottom half of the timing belt housing. And I didn't realise, but I'd taken the engine mount off when I first started on this car. It was one of the first things I did, was take the engine mount off so that I could get to the top of the timing belt. And then I took the cover off, and it turns out that you can't put the cover back on with the engine mounting in place. So I've loosened it all off so I can get the engine plastic cover over the timing belt, and then put the engine mount back together again. But I'm also going to take the opportunity to do the exhaust shroud as well, because I think that I needed to have the engine loose for that, because it wouldn't come around the exhaust properly. So not the end of the world, it's just an extra little job. I jumped ahead of myself, and I shouldn't have done. Bit impatient really, I suppose. So I'm going to get the black plastic cover on, and I think incidentally I can see up there at the top of the right at the top of the screen in the middle, if I can find a pointer, just there, that is the bottom of the idler tensioner for the timing belt. And you can see there's a clevis there, it's like a fork, and it goes over the web in the front of the engine block there. There's a little web on the casting, and that's what it contacts on, so it's quite easy to see that under there from this point of view. So if you can see that when you do yours, you can see that's where it's meant to fit. So it's quite useful, that. Right, let's get this cover on, get the belt on and get the pulley on, get it all tensioned up.
So the front pulley has got face avant printed on it, which means front. So just going to line up the 3 screw holes. I think they're all uniform, yes, so the same size, it doesn't matter where they go. There's no timing mark on here as such. So it's just 3 screws. Screw them together. 6PK730. So it's 6 ribs because it's a multi-rib belt. 6 ribs and then 730mm long. Right, now we just do it up again. Probably one of the easiest alternator belts I've ever done. Now these multi-rib belts tend to need quite a lot of tension on them. I haven't got the manual for this machine, so I don't know what the tension is, so I'm going to do it quite tight and then see, because they can squeal even when you've done them up real tight, which is a bit of a pain really, but there you go. If we got to do it again, we'll do it again. I won't put the shroud in until I've done it, as in the wheel arch shroud. Okay, so we've now got belt on, pulley on, belt on, tensioned up. It's pretty tight, so we'll see how that goes. Haven't done that up yet, not fully, but I will do, and I'm going to put the exhaust shroud on. And last job is to put antifreeze in, and then we're going to give it a try.
So I've got some coolant, mixed 50-50. It's the OAT formulation, pink stuff, and conforms to, there's so many different ones these days. Glysantin, which is what the trademark is, because it's got glycol in it. It's universal 5-year engine coolant, suitable for all year round usage in automotive and commercial petrol, diesel engines and certain industrial applications. Certainly good enough for what we need on this project. I've already mixed it already to 50-50. I have some ready to go. So the there is a little bleed screw on the thermostat housing, which I noticed earlier. I'm just going to pour this in, and just hopefully none of it pours out the bottom. There's a bleed screw, or a bleed pipe I should say, from the top of the radiator back to the expansion tank. I've just got to let it work its way through really. Looks like the job is done. Started first time. Normal noise from the top. Everything sounds good, nothing's leaking. I think we've done a good job. We've saved about 700 quid. I think the quote was for £1,000 to do the cylinder head, and they didn't want to do it. They wanted to change the engine. So for the sake of, I think it was £250 for the parts, for the engine parts, plus about, I think about another £70–80 for the service parts, because I'm going to service the engine, air filter, pollen filter, oil filter, change the oil, put new antifreeze in obviously, new alternator belt, and I'm going to do the brakes as well. So all in, with all of that, it's about 350 quid's worth of parts, and the job is finished and done. So I'm very pleased, and it can now go back to my daughter and she will sell it. Well, there you go. So we've saved ourselves some pennies. I've enjoyed doing it, mostly. I don't like working on modern cars. Horrible, plasticky, nasty things, really. I just don't like working on modern cars. The most modern car I've got is the Jaguar XF, and I don't really do much work of that on myself. I give that to the Jaguar specialist to look after for me, because they're such a nightmare. Everything's so fiddly and tight and difficult to get to, and there's plastic bits which break. You know, at least with that thing there, that lovely big black beast there, at least I can fix that, and nothing will break on that. I mean, that's got some plastic bits on it, but yeah, this thing here, well, it's done. That's all I can say, really. This car is actually quite a good car. It's done 49,000 miles. It's got no rust on it. It's now got engine repairs done to it, new cam belt, service, new brakes. It's got good tyres on it. Be a good car for somebody. So yeah, we're going to get it on the market and move it on. So thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy what we do. Want to keep up with our mechanical adventures. Every subscription, every like, every comment is always very helpful to the channel, but also it gives me support and motivation to carry on doing this stuff. It needs doing, and I need to get it done anyway, but doing the YouTube stuff, it gives me motivation to get on with it, because I think, oh, I've got an audience that needs to see what I'm doing. Whether they do or not, I don't know, but you know, it's a motivational thing, whatever. So yeah, thank you for watching. Take care. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.